everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Africa Energy Series webinar, brought to you by the organizers of the Nigeria Oil and Gas Conference and the Practical Nigerian Content Forum. My name is Wemimo Oyelano and I'm with DMG Events. Today's webinar will be a spotlight interview on Nigeria LNG's Train 7, and we have the pleasure of having with us today Tony ATTAH, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria LNG. He is being interviewed by Patricia Roberts, Managing Director of LNG Worldwide. With all that's happening globally, namely the pandemic and its impact on the oil and gas industry, the awarding of Train 7's EPC contracts to Saipem, Daewoo and Chiyoda was certainly a breath of fresh air, to say the least. This is in large part due to the popularity we've seen with this webinar. We have people from all over the world, record numbers of participants, and I want to say a very warm welcome to everybody that's joining us for the first time and to those who have joined us frequently on our webinars. I encourage participants to submit their questions by typing it into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. I would like to thank everybody who submitted their questions in advance. We will endeavor to answer as many of these as possible, as well as the questions we get during the Q&A session. All our previous webinars within the Africa Energy series, they're all available on demand, and you can access them by visiting www.cwcnog.com. That's www.cwcnog.com. I would like to once again thank Tony ATTAH and Pat Roberts for their time, and thanks to everyone for participating in today's webinar. Over to you, Patricia.
Thank you very much. And hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is just gone 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Nigeria and also in London, and around 10 o'clock in the evening in Asia and 9 a.m. in the US Gulf. As Wemimo said, we've attracted so many people for this webinar. It's a record number registered, over 3,000 people. And there is absolutely no doubt this is a very popular topic, and for lots of reasons, but not least is the fact that the NLNG joint venture took an FID to expand its LNG facilities by around 8 million tonnes, which was announced at the end of December. And then during these most turbulent times over the last few months, it has very successfully awarded the EPC contracts and secured project financing. Now, I mentioned in my podcast last Friday that I thought the CEO role in any oil and gas company right now is a really difficult one. And I am therefore delighted that Mr. Tony ATTAH, the Managing Director and CEO of NLNG, has agreed to a live presentation and interview with us. The topics we're going to be covering are essentially how Nigeria LNG has successfully progressed its plans, and what are its plans throughout construction and the startup of the new train. And in the short term, how NLNG is weathering the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in Europe and with low volatile prices. And then we're going to look a bit further down the track to how NLNG sees the global industry evolving, and then what are the opportunities for the Nigerian gas business overall. So those are our topics, and please do feel free to send us in some questions. We're expecting that we may get a lot of questions, so we'll try and group them into themes. And we're envisaging that the webinar will be for about 1 hour. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Tony now and ask him if he will, first of all, give us the presentation. And please notice as well that a copy of these slides will be made available to everyone who's registered, and they'll be sent to you later. So without any further ado, let's go over to Tony, and if you could give us your presentation, please.
All right, can you hear me okay, Pat?
We can hear, I can hear, loud and clear, thank you.
Super. First of all, let me thank you and Wemimo especially for organizing this, but also to all the people who have taken time to join this webinar. I am so pleased to have you, and I hope that the next 1 hour or 1 hour, 15 minutes will be of great value to you. Before we go into the question and answer sessions, I just thought to put Nigeria LNG in some perspective so that those who are new to the company will understand where we're coming from. We are a private company owned by 4 very strong shareholders, underpinned by government at 49% equity, represented by NNPC. Then you've got, of course, Shell, you've got Total, Eni. I must put it on record that the #1 and #2 LNG company in the world are our shareholders. So Shell is #1 in LNG, Total is #2, and these 2 shareholders underpin our strength, of course, supported by government and Eni. Nigeria LNG represents what is possible when you have the right focus, structure, and indeed governance as exemplified by the NLNG model, which a lot of people talk about. We are a private company, and as you see, our vision is to be a global company, global LNG company on the one hand. On the other hand, we want to help build a better Nigeria. We indeed do have 2 subsidiaries, one Bonigas Transport, and then NSML, which is our shipping arm. Next slide. Overall, last year we celebrated 20 years of very successful operations, but also 30 years of being in existence since 1989 when the company was incorporated. As we like to say here, we live in blocks of 30, so we've lived a period between 1989 and 2019, which is 30 years. But between the early 60s and 1989 was a 30-year window where our founding fathers dreamt of a company like this. But it was incorporated in 1989, and up to 2019 was a solid 30-year journey, which culminated in incorporating the company, building the first train, but overall now ending up with 6 trains. We only recently sort of took a view on the next 30, having lived the first 30 as a company. And that is what we said, we're trying to lay the foundation for 2050 and being fit for that window. Today, we have delivered more than 4,800 cargoes to the world, bringing energy. We have 23 dedicated LNG ships. As I mentioned, we have 6 trains today at 22 million tons per annum. And train 7 that we're going to talk about is really to add to that capacity by 35%, essentially going from 22 million tons to 30 million tons. A very solid company with over $11 billion asset base and balance sheet. To date, we have delivered, this data is slightly behind, more than $110 billion in revenue over the window, and at least $35 billion in dividends to our shareholders. I must say this, we are all about creating value for stakeholders, starting with our shareholders, of course, our staff, society, and indeed our customers. And I must reference how we are perceived by our customers as responsible, reliable, but most importantly, trusted. And I think we'll come to that factor as it affects how we are weathering the storm. On the right-hand side of helping to build a better Nigeria, we remain the receptacle for gas. We are the sink for gas. The upstream production, as you would expect, comes with some flaring, but we have led to massive reduction in gas flaring in Nigeria, reducing by more than 65%. Today, gas flaring is at less than 20% in the country. And as far as the upstream producers can gather that gas, we are available as Nigeria LNG to receive it, thereby not just eliminating gas flaring, but also offering monetization opportunity for the government. To date, we buy gas. It's not very obvious. We don't have our own gas wells. We don't produce gas. We buy gas. So when people talk about NLNG flaring, it's interesting because you cannot buy gas to go and flare it. So we buy gas, we add value to it. And from just our gas purchase alone, we've contributed more than 13 billion to federal government, and at least 17 billion of the 35 in terms of the dividends that I referenced has gone to government. We are a 100% Nigerian managed company. on my leadership. We are all Nigerians, and I think that is a testament of what is possible, as I said, when you really focus on what you want to achieve. Overall, we have contributed what is about $8 billion in taxes since we became taxpayers. And I think I must mention that we are partnering with both the federal government and state government to really, really fight the COVID situation. And so far, we have contributed what is more than $4 million in terms of our support to both community, the state, and the federal government. We are a very socially responsible company. Without spending too much time, I just want to touch on what we do in terms of our support to society. We have a 4-point agenda supporting society. We focus on health, we focus on education, we focus on infrastructural development, but most importantly on youth development, because we believe the future is about developing the youth today to be able to take charge tomorrow. You will see on the top left-hand side is Bonny Bodo Road, which is the first opportunity to connect Bonny, which is an island where our terminal sits, to Port Harcourt, the state capital of Rivers State. To date, you can only go by river or you fly in if you have the means. But with our support, we're partnering with the federal government to build this road to connect Bonny to Port Harcourt. This is a $700 million project, and we are contributing 50% of that as part of our support to society. This project is about 40% complete. The bridge you are looking at is real, it's on ground, and verifiable for people who know the location. The biggest success that I would really point to will be around the health front. We have today launched what is the community health insurance scheme in Bonny, where with about $40 a year, you have full health cover. But in the course of setting up the health insurance scheme, we carried out a feasibility study just to understand what are the prevalent ailments in Bonny Island. And it turns out to be about 75% was largely malaria. So we then said to ourselves, then we should focus on malaria. And today we have actually started a project which is looking to eradicate malaria from Bonny Island. We know it is possible. We know it's not going to be easy, but we know it's been done elsewhere, and that journey has started. For me, that is very positive. Today, we contribute our support to the country because if you look at it there, the predominant source of energy is typically biomass, kerosene, and firewood. But we do this to bring energy into country, but also to really tackle both environmental and health side of it, because we have on data that more than 1 million people die from smoke inhalation, mostly women and children just trying to put food on the table. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, that data is about 100,000 women and children who die on an annual basis just trying to put food on the table. And Nigeria LNG is about to change that narrative by changing the energy source with which people deliver food to their families. And that is why we're so committed to continuing to bring LPG into Nigeria. I'll go quickly to Train 7. Train 7 is here. Train 7, we believe, will bring a lot of fortune to Nigeria, of course, to our immediate communities, and to the company itself. It took a while, but finally it has arrived, and we are very delighted that we were able to take the Train 7 FID back end of December, but most importantly, being able to put pen on paper to sign the actual EPC contract, which tees it off for actual delivery just last month, about May the 13th. So in a nutshell, this sort of gives you a flavor for the company. I'm sure we will take a lot of Q&As from yourselves, but more from Pat as it were just now. So thank you, and back to you, Pat.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. And so, ladies and gentlemen, yes, please do send us in your questions. I can see that quite a lot of people are communicating already. So I'll just start off with the themes that we wanted to cover, and we will then look at the questions coming in and we'll incorporate those too. So, Tony, as at the end of December, Nigeria LNG announced its plans for an 8 million tonne expansion. And since then, you've successfully progressed with the EPC contract and with some project financing. But I suppose you have a world that no one could ever have expected to face in the last 5 months with COVID-19. Has that done anything to slow down the project or to slow down the awards? What challenge did you face in actually getting through to this stage?
Oh, it's incredible. I think if you just step back a little bit, as I mentioned in the intro, this has been a very long journey. Our last FID for Train 6 was in 2004. So essentially it's taken more than 15 years to finally get Train 7 going. For me personally, it's very emotional because between 1999 and 2006, we were deemed the fastest growing LNG company in the world. And just after our 6th train, it came to a screeching halt, and all the attempts to get to Train 7, as you realize now, is taking 15 years. In that window, we dropped from being actually 10% of the market to less than 7% today. With the arrival of the United States and Australia, of course, with the share revolution, the market completely changed. And if you blink, you're left behind, which is the name of the game here. We got lucky this time, I will say. I personally normally will say, oh, the stars lined up for Train 7. But a lot of people will remind me we got a lot of support from the presidency under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, who, when we visited him and proudly said, this is Nigeria LNG, we have 6 trains, we add value to country, and he says, hold it. I was part of this project from the onset. Why are you still at Train 6? I expect you to be at Train 12 by now. And we were all trying to back. But he then gave commitment, and I must say, credit to him and the government. We got that support that was very valuable. We also got a lot of support from the Minister of State for Petroleum, who actually has declared 2020 as the year of gas and has really lent his support to us. In the course of this journey, there's a game changer, which is the Nigerian Content Act, a law that didn't exist when we last took FID in 2004, and we had to contend with that. But then the support from the Executive Secretary of NCDMB was very immense. But I think by far the biggest support was from the shareholders who believe in the company and believe in the pedigree of what we can achieve and what we have done so far. Essentially, they took that decision to say, this is a great project. You have proven that you can operate. You have proven that you can deliver projects over the last 20 years, and we will support you to go on. And essentially, the board and our staff all back this, which is how this was launched. But as it affects COVID, no one saw this coming.
No one. Not at all.
In fact, we have even tried to understand what the reality is. But some of the internal analyses that have come to us would suggest that we are at war. A lot of people will liken this to the First World War and the Spanish flu. But here we are with the reality of what started like the United States versus China trade war. And matter of fact, that war is still ongoing on. Then boom, here comes COVID-19 straight out of Wuhan, China. And some people even say, wait a minute, is this a Chinese response to the US-China trade war? But then you have the trade war going on, you have COVID-19, which has also been declared as a trade war against an invisible enemy, which is the virus. And out of the blues, you then have the Saudi, OPEC, Russia price war. So these 3 wars commingling was the catastrophic outcome you saw of something that no one has ever seen called the negative oil price and the overarching impact of that in the entire market and the disconnects that have happened since then is only a matter of survival for most of us today. As it were, we are really at the moment just getting to terms with, okay, you have the EPC contract, you have the final investment decision. How do you execute in a COVID world? And I think we're not alone in trying to find an answer to that kind of question. So it is an ongoing process for us.
So a lot of companies have just literally run for cover. They've said, we won't take FID, we won't implement the projects for a year, we'll wait and see. But actually, Nigeria LNG has gone ahead, it's awarded the EPC, and it's arranged project financing. Was that difficult in itself as a decision, or was that relatively an easy thing to accomplish?
Definitely not an easy thing. I mean, if it was easy, we would have taken it 15 years ago when there was even no COVID. So I must say it's divine in a way. In the most difficult of times, we got the decision and we moved ahead. For me, it's really underpinning the fact that Nigeria LNG is very resilient, and we have the capacity to be able to demonstrate that we can deliver under multiple circumstances. But let me address the subject of funding. The funding aspect for us is about the robustness of our business and the business model, and the belief that market has about this brand. We have paid back the very primary loan of 5.45 billion without fail. Last year we paid back, and for us that lent more credibility to the brand. Already this is a very solid brand underpinned by a very big balance sheet of over 11 billion. We've proven that we can pay back, and we are earning money. We're not a green project, we're a brown project, and I think that really helped. But today we are consolidating on that brand credibility to just be able to ensure that we deliver the project itself, first of all, in a safe manner, but one again that gives confidence to the market. We are absolutely delighted that we are able to attract financing and funding in the face of the toughest situation. Yes. We went out looking for money, but we got twice what we were looking for in the marketplace. And for me, that is a testament of the confidence that the market has on Nigeria and indeed on the company. And COVID or not, we've got to deliver.
And do you think there will be any delays in construction of the project?
No, I don't think there will be delays, but that would almost be predicting how soon COVID will end. Instead, I'm listening to my doctor who has said, look, this is a virus that's not going to go away soon. Just like HIV, we have to try and understand it more, but most importantly, we have to learn to live with it and live in its midst. We are already working to deploy technology around the three main guidance that we've got: social distancing, wash hands with soap, but also wear face masks. So between these three, how do you achieve social distancing, achieving the right sanitary conditions on site, and having workers under very difficult conditions have to work with masks and learn to breathe and carry on? So it's a process that we are studying. Yes. Will it lead to delays? I really cannot say, but essentially we are on, and I believe we will just learn to live with the virus and move on as much as possible. So essentially it's about starting first and then understanding fully what it takes to keep going.
And of course, we're talking about the immediate short term here. We've got plunging prices and volatile prices in Europe. How is Nigeria LNG faring just managing the day-to-day issues of COVID-19? In what is a very, very difficult market, probably the most difficult market we've ever had.
This is where your first statement of not being envious of a CEO in the energy world is really, really very apt. It is a cyclical market ordinarily, and I believe that the fundamentals of the markets will not change drastically. We didn't expect that this will get to the level with these three wars coming together the way we described them. But we actually already saw the market changing gears last year. You saw the decoupling of LNG prices from Brent at some point, but we also saw convergence of prices between Asia, Europe, TTF, and even sometimes getting close to the Henry Hub. Those are things that we had never seen before. So we were already beginning to learn to adjust to that and beginning to accept that perhaps the changing energy mix and energy transitions beginning to take effect in terms of a lower for much longer scenario. And we were just barely adjusting to that, and now this. Mm-hmm. But this is even worse, because in the model we developed to be able to respond, it was purely conventional, manage your demand and supply.
Yes.
But suddenly you have a situation where COVID did not impacted both demand and supply.
Absolutely.
That has made it even more difficult to respond. But so far, we have relied more on our social capital and relationship with our customers, most importantly. But secondly, with the commercial dexterity and creativity of our commercial teams, just being able to keep coming up with options, possibilities that we partner with our customers to just keep going. We made a choice from the beginning to manage in crisis mode. Most importantly, keep our people safe, people in the widest context of ourselves as staff, families, society, communities, neighbors, keep them safe, but to keep the business up and running. And that in itself is already a challenge under normal conditions, but to now operate in COVID times makes it even more difficult. But we are absolutely pursuing those two objectives today. Our plant is up and running. We continue to bring volumes to the market, supply our customers, and work in partnership with those who are having difficulty just to find creative solutions to stay afloat. And as you really said, it's a survival game until this wind blows away.
And in terms of Nigeria LNG Train 7, some of your shareholders are, of course, going to act as the off-takers for this, so they'll be managing it in their own portfolio. Do you think that that helped with the project financing, that you've got, you know, sort of the equity investors also as the off-takers?
Yeah, you know, the business has a lot of reliance on the off-takers. As we say in the mission, you actually have to find the market before you even produce it. So it's a conversation we had where people say, hey, I want to lend you money, but I need you to show me the market. So it's not just enough to say I can produce. In this game, it's really about the market. I must say that it definitely added to the credibility of the project. But by far more importantly, we already demonstrated that the company on its own was very viable. We kickstarted the sales and marketing of our trains 1 to 3 in 2017 out of Gastech in Japan. So we put out what is almost 7 million tons for remarketing. And I must say the offer was very humbling for me. We put out 7 million tons in the market just to remarket, and we got offers for 60 or so million tons. So on its own, the company has credibility, but quite frankly, from a financing point of view, you can't decouple the import and pedigree of the shareholders from the confidence that we were able to build. But on our own pedigree, yes, we could have weathered it, but I think everything helps, as we say, in the course of looking for the money.
Now, as you look forward over the next few years, there is also some remarketing of trains 4, 5, 6, isn't there? And I see that you have been quite active already and you've renewed some contracts and so on. But with the COVID pandemic and the uncertainty in the demand, does that add more pressure to you in terms of not only bringing on a new train, but remarketing some of the volumes from trains 4 to 6?
It definitely would bring some pressure, going by what we went through to remarket 7 million tons, even more. But we've learned a lot in the time. And it is the first time that we are remarketing any volumes. The volumes only come to term in another 1 or 2 years, but we actually took a decision to start remarketing early, which offered us the opportunity to learn about what it takes to remarket even 1 million ton. I would imagine trains 4, 5, 6 will go through the same process, but most importantly, we are more prepared now. We have learned a lot over the remarketing of the first 3 trains. 4, 5, 6, I believe, will go through the same format There are lessons learned from the last one, which we hope to apply. But I think just being comforted that the Train 7 off-takers are guaranteed, we don't see a commingling of remarketing 456 with Train 7, which has already been established. So it's a matter of dealing with the process. And I think by then COVID should be out of the way. Our first remarketing opportunity for 456 should be after 2022. So hopefully we either understand the virus or we've eliminated it with a vaccine. One way or the other, we'll find a solution.
So you are now joining a club of a lot of developers who've got projects under construction. I added it up last week and there's about 100 million tonnes under construction. 70 million tonnes of that took FID last year. So you were part of the 2019. But there is 100 million tonnes all around the world today under construction. What do you think the world looks like for the global LNG industry in the 2020s? Is it going to become a lot more competitive, a lot more commoditized? What are some of your key sort of views that you could share with us about how this industry is going to grow?
I believe there are opportunities ahead. And in essence, COVID from a market point of view is not all negative. Because just as you've said, there's 100 million tons capacity in construction or going in construction, but there are quite a few that have also been turned down and cancelled. So the forecast of hitting what is 700 million tons in another couple of years, hoping that the extant 350 will double, is not going to happen. So for every project that has been turned down, there is a hole which has been created in the future projection. And I believe that will bring about tightness in the future, which then is an opportunity for those of us who have really put the chest out with that bravado going the course. But overall, in terms of where this is all heading, I think the cyclical pattern of the market will not change. I think the fundamentals will not disappear, at least will not change drastically. But I expect a lot to happen more from the changing energy mix as a result of climate change and the energy transition than from where all of this is coming. A lot will depend on what happens to China, India, and the better part of Asia. Today, just looking at China, China is still the highest user of coal, generating what is more than 900 gigawatts from coal. If they even just reduce that by 10, 20% and switch to gas, that creates massive, massive opportunity for gas and indeed LNG. But I believe overall, the fundamentals that will drive the future of energy and particularly LNG is about the population growth that has been projected. Today at 7 billion or so of us in the world, by 2040, which is essentially just 20 years time, we expect to add another 2 billion. 2 billion people, that's adding one China, one India, or 20 Nigerias across the world. Those people are going to need energy. And the question is, where will that come from? But then the challenge of we need energy, but we want it clean. And we don't want fossil fuel is then the dilemma that we have to deal with. And I believe that of all the fossil fuel, gas is the cleanest of all, and by far a lot of attraction to renewables, but I don't think there is any energy mix that has renewables without gas to be able to bridge that gap and meet the demand of the future. So gas will stay relevant, is my thought.
So do I take it then that you are still quite bullish and optimistic of LNG demand growth throughout the 2020s?
Definitely. That's why Train 7 has gone ahead. Matter of fact, we have started the maturation of Train 8. Hoping
well, I'm going to ask you, why
for
stop?
9 and 10.
Yes, why stop at Train 7? And there was a question that came in that said, how about Trains 8 to 12? So tell us a bit about your sort of strategy, if you like, for how you see Nigeria progressing with gas production and developments over the 2020s?
I think the Nigeria story is one that will not be complete without gas. And I mentioned upfront that the Minister for State for Petroleum has declared 2020 the year of gas. Gas is a major resource in Nigeria. In fact, I've been at a conference, one where you were as well, but someone had approached me and said, hey, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Nigeria. And he sort of like, oh yeah, that gas country that has some oil. And that really took me aback. So what do you mean that gas country? We are known as an oil nation. He said, no. I've looked at your numbers. You actually have by far more gas in barrels of oil equivalent than you do have gas reserves. So we have proven 200 TCF of gas, and we have another 600 TCF that we know about, but need to prove under the SEC rules. Today, as number 9 in the world in terms of gas reserves, if you prove the 600, you go straight away to number 4 ahead of Turkmenistan. But for me, that is a major opportunity to really just jumpstart the sector. You know, today we have a gas master plan, we have gas policies from 2017, but a lot will depend on the fiscals and how the government is able to incentivize gas development, which must happen. It has to happen. With the energy transition that I mentioned, it comes to mind that at some point in the history of Nigeria, coal was the mainstay before we found oil. There is still coal in Enugu in Nigeria, but nobody talks about it. And the last you want is to have fossil fuel disappear in another 50 years, and the country has not maximized value from it. We believe that it's time for gas, and there is a great opportunity with Nigeria LNG properly positioned to keep developing these trains. The government then must do justice to ensure that the reserves that we know about are actually brought into production. And a lot will depend on what she does for this to happen.
Thank you. We've got so many questions coming in. I'm trying furiously here to try to scan them and put them into themes for you.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the sort of developments in domestic sort of market in Nigeria? Because there is some scope, isn't there, that potentially Nigeria LNG could shuttle tankers around Nigeria and supply some of the domestic market with LNG?
Yes. As I mentioned, we already modeled what you're describing around LPG. As of 2007, the entire national capacity of LPG was just 50,000 tons. But since we got involved as market makers, we've grown that capacity to more than 650,000 tons, out of which we today deliver what is about 45% to the market. We've looked at the model. It's not a subsidy model, but it's one that has proven to work. And we are currently looking at bringing LNG into country. But essentially, LNG for us is a coastal business where you really need a pathway for our vessels to sail. So within that, we see huge opportunity, 2 reasons. One, with the global market dwindling, we see very high demand for gas and other forms of energy in Nigeria and indeed entire Africa. As you know, more than 50% of the population that does not have access to energy in the world is in Africa. So the domestic LNG project that we're looking at is to be piloted in Nigeria, then we go regional and then look at Africa as a whole. It's a project that's already on. As we speak, there are quite a few people who have indicated interest, and we're working with them to just see how much capacity they are able to develop or build to make this real. Initially, and to date, we stay on the supply side.
Yes.
But we've come to terms with recognizing that with the changing market, today we are price takers.
Yeah.
And we've just established that the price is no longer within anybody's forecast view or control. We perhaps have a future where we have to be a market maker for this to be able to have the essence of the full value chain come into fruition in country. Yes, we are thinking of domestic LNG in the same model and manner that we did of LPG, which has been greatly successful. And I believe LNG can come into Nigeria as well.
Because the idea of being able to supply remote areas with small quantities of gas was a really sort of good gas to power story, isn't it, for Nigeria itself? Do you see that happening in the next few years, or do you think that is much longer term?
Like I said, we've already started working on it. I can't put a date, specific date to when it will happen, but essentially it's one that I believe in the more near term, this will come to fruition. But as everyone will say, where is the infrastructure? Where is the market? Looking at the gas fiscals and market in the domestic today, there's still quite a lot that needs to be done. But essentially, we believe that we have a role to play there in the market making opportunity scope to just help define and shape what it will take. And we have proven pedigree, as I mentioned, in the LPG space, and we are hoping to apply the same model to just be able to bring the LNG to country to be real. Of course, in partnership with others that are active in that kind of space.
Yes. Now, and of course, it has been done in other countries to some extent, you know, like in Indonesia, for example. So it's very much a sort of a credible option, I think. I've got a lot of questions coming in about asking you about all these gas reserves that you have and saying, is Nigeria looking at floating liquefaction in the future, or is that not on the agenda? Because that was deemed from a sort of an accessing of the deep water reserves and also from a cost competitive point of view. What was your view on floating liquefaction as a monetization route?
I will not rule out anything, but I will say we are aware of the reserves offshore. I know of Moderator, which is said to have up of 10 TCF, very deep offshore. I know of all the reserves onshore. On balance, the 200 TCF that I reference is largely onshore. So you have to trade off in terms of availability of raw material to position your plant. If you are to develop an asset base like Moderator, which is about 10, 12 TCF and deep offshore, we have looked at that to bring Moderator gas back to onshore to a plant like ours quite clearly will not be economical. And I believe the most logical way to develop that kind of reserve would have to be floating. Essentially, the trade-off between floating or onshore will depend on the source of the gas. But as I mentioned, most of the gas in reference are already onshore. So you may find that for Nigeria, it's perhaps more optimal to really just position onshore, but not rule out the opportunity for floating, which is, again, proven technology. So Nigeria is open, and we believe that either way can go, but we are onshore. Most of the reserves are onshore. And as such, if you are referring to Train 8 will be onshore. And we have started to work for that.
You heard it here first. The other thing that people are asking about really is, you were talking about being competitive and cost competitive. And the questions which I see some of them coming up with saying, is there any sort of plan to be a leader in the sort of digitalization of the gas industry to sort of improve processes in order to try, I suppose, to just cut supply cost chains? Is there anything in the Train 7 project that is quite new, or is it quite a conventional build?
I think, let me address the digitalization. The world is going digital, and you either align or be left behind. A lot of projects were done in the early 90s in analog mode with some digitalization, DCS systems and all of that. But the future is digital, even machine learning, AI. So we cannot afford to be left behind. While we look today at digitalization with two lenses, one looking at what already exists in Trains 1 to 6 and saying, how much of 1 to 6 can we fully digitalize well into the future to stay relevant and to stay current? You have to look at a new project like Prince 7 with an eye for the future, because the project itself is one that builds an asset that should last at least 25 years. So you have a forward view of 25 years, you're building today, you have to build with the mindset of what you understand of that future. And we know that the future is digital. So we are looking at digital overall from the operational angle, which is again, data systems. How do you synchronize, digitalize, and as you say, look for efficiencies and try to reposition as a cost leader on the back of digitalization. But as it affects Train 7, it has to be a bit of both. Why we initially were very bullish, the school of thought that says, build brand new, build everything digital, go 100% digital. In the end, you still have to answer the question around how do you stay cost competitive? If you go 100% digital, how much of reskilling of your current resources, human resources, can you do in the time? Can you really afford to have a Train 1 to 6 that is not 100% digital and a Train 7 standalone that is 100% digital? How do you manage that? So these are some of the factors that drove the necessity to say, lean into typical project concept of design one, build many, but deal with obsolescence in the old ones and high grade as you go along, which is the mindset from the project bit. But digitalization for us is about adapt or be wiped out. So definitely we have to adapt.
Okay, now a question here, which I think you will probably want to give us some clarification on, because we've got a variety of questions coming in saying, what measures can you as Nigeria LNG put in place to ensure that the EPC contractors use as much local content as possible? So would you like to give us some clarification on exactly how that EPC relationship with you works and how they would go about designing the key resources that they need?
I must say it's an excellent question, one that I would have been surprised if it didn't come up. Let me just confirm that even though it took 15 years to get to the gate of the FID, once we got going, and as I said, with the stars fully aligning for this project to go on, we went between setting up the front-end engineering design with two consortia competing for it, to actually going through the EPC contracting process and reaching FID within 15 months, which is record time. If you're a project person, a typical FEED alone will need about 18 months. But to be able to deliver FEED, EPC contracting, and reach a decision on contractor in 15 months for us is no mean feat. Essentially doing all of that while complying to what I mentioned as the Nigerian Content Act. So we worked in very active partnership with the Nigerian Content Development Board to just be able to be clear as to what elements of the project will be restricted and ring fence as Nigerian content. In my presentation, I didn't quite get to it, but 55% of engineering and procurement services of goods will be sourced in country. 55%. 100% of construction, of course, will be in country. There's a huge opportunity to create what is more than 12,000 jobs, So we think we will have to comply with the Nigerian content law. The project from the FEED stage was in partnership with the NCDMB, which is the Nigerian Content Board. We even have a master Nigerian content plan that has been approved for us to be able to work. So we will definitely have to align and deliver on that plan. Essentially, the contractor is also duty bound to deliver that, but we will be subject to a lot of assurance processes by the board. And I believe that there is no other way to do it. If anything, it adds value to society. It helps with that capacity development and participation that you really want to see while growing the overall capacity in country. So Nigerian content is a major factor here, and is one that we shall comply with in delivering Train 7, for sure.
And in fact, that leads me to a question which I'm sure you've been asked endless times, but it's an opportunity this afternoon, I think, to reaffirm this. It's really coming from people saying, what would you say the local benefits are to the local people from the whole Nigerian LNG project? And we're talking here about local content and local firms, but also skilling up of the resources as well. So a question for you is the degree of local content,
Yes.
the degree of change.
I think the biggest opportunity from a local content standpoint, especially for immediate communities, is employment, which is huge. Today in the Niger Delta where we are, the biggest problem is really underpinned by poverty and unemployment. And these two feed on each other. And anyone you can excise, you actually change the narrative of the location. We had militancy in the 90s, and that militancy was resolved by an amnesty program, which actually provided some form of capacity building employment for about 35,000 youths. We believe that just being in a position to create at least 12,000 jobs already on its own is massive, massive opportunity for the communities to be employed, stay employed over the 6-year life of the project. For us, that is a major contribution already. But in the course of the project, there'll be all sorts of programs that help, immediate communities to build capacity and participate. And we have what is a social program linked to sustainable development of how we actually deliver projects, but also enable communities to build capacity to participate. I think for me, that is a major improvement. We did that when we built 6 ships a couple of years ago. We actually trained more than 600 seafarers just on the back of building ships. If we're able to impact 600 people in shipbuilding, ship maintenance, but also to be able to sail. We got to a position where Nigerian-made products were actually shipped to Korea to be used on those ships. The entire furniture on the ships are now made in Nigeria. All the cabling, the critical cabling made in Nigeria, cables on the ship, exported to Korea, used there, to the extent that we understand that some Korean companies today actually now buy directly from those Nigerian companies. As I said, we are market makers. We've exposed them, and that has created a new opportunity for them. So I think Phase 7 will do more.
You've perfectly answered the next question in a way, because people are saying, with your direct experience and leadership in Nigeria LNG, what would you say to other companies in Nigeria, not in LNG, but just in other industries? What would you do to get them to encourage the use of local talent and local content? And I think you've more or less answered the question, but is there anything else you wanted to add there? Of, as a leader, what would you be saying to other Nigerian companies?
I would say the future is about being self-sufficient. And self-sufficiency is about playing in the local community where you are, being able to high grade and build capacity and use that capacity. For me, is part of that competitive edge which every company should desire to achieve. As a matter of fact, the future of the survival we talked about will be around cost leadership. In the end, those who can bring down their costs and be more efficient, nimble, and agile are the ones who will survive. All the others will be wiped out. In fact, there's a statistic that said after COVID, more than 20% of companies will not come back. Those who come back have to be more nimble with their costs. So part of being efficient in costs is being able to just adapt around your locality and partly building capacity. So I think it's a business opportunity more than a burden. You have to work within the capacity available, but then the edge is being able to grow that capacity to meet your need as a company. And we are not alone in understanding that, I believe.
And I've got a lovely question here, which is saying, if you had one wish that could be granted for the 2020s, what would it be?
"2020, it's a great future. As I said, we live in blocks of 30. We had the first 30 where our founding fathers only dreamt of a company like this. We've now had the second wave of 30 from incorporation in 1989 to 2019, 30 years, within which 20 years we've proven our pedigree of being an excellent company, a global player. We've helped to build a better Nigeria. We've now started to look at the next 30 between 2020 and 2050, and that's the window you're talking about. In an attempt to just position for what is being fit for 50, as we call it in-house, we carried out a realigning to win transformation journey last year to deliver top quartile by 2019, which we did achieve. We achieved more than 98% reliability, which is world-class. We delivered the highest volume ever from the plant at almost 98% capacity of the plant. You know, we've also the bottleneck to sort of stretch and be more optimal. We've come into 2020 carrying the euphoria of the success from our transformation agenda. And as such, we sort of were bullish and bold, but then we refreshed our strategy, keeping it simple to say, okay, what will it take to stay competitive? In the end, it's about how you manage your costs. And as we often say on the inside, your profit will always sit within the cost. Your profit is in the cost. Until you're able to extricate that profit from the cost, you will not be competitive. But overall, we've said we will keep it safe, we'll keep it full, which is the license to make it grow, underpinned by discipline, accountability, discipline, delivery, and accountability. But overall, it's about cost leadership and staying bullish and nimble to survive. I see a future that is very positive. I see one that is even more positive for Nigeria if you look at the level of the resource. So if you look at today, we have 22 million tons LNG plant. We're growing on the back of train 7 to 30 million tons with a reserve base of 200 TCF. Now listen to this. Australia, which today is number 1, has just 150 TCF, but they have 88 million tons and they are going for 128. So if you look at Mozambique, Mozambique has just 100 TCF, and the first move they made is to go for 50 million tons plants. Okay, 2 projects, but 50 million tons on the back of 100 TCF versus even at the end of T7, 30 million tons out of 200 TCF plus potential 600, which we will prove. You see that the scope for Nigeria to become a global leader in LNG is massive. And I essentially proves that Train 7 is actually no longer ambitious. So we have to keep going. We have to build the 8, 9, and 10. And as someone did ask, will you go up to 12, 15? We have to, as a nation, to be able to maximize the benefit and value of gas, which I believe is the future. More and more, we will see gas take center stage in terms of the energy mix being the greatest partner to renewables to be able to keep going. It's about national relevance. It's about the future of next generation. Massive scope for Nigeria.
You have an incredible resource base, as you say, and you see a lot of demand growth because you see gas as being a very integral part of the energy transition. But during this COVID pandemic, although lots of FIDs have been delayed, Qatar are saying they will definitely take FID, and they're looking at an expansion of around 49 million tons. So they're looking to fire into that space into the 2020s as well, with creating very cost competitive LNG. As you said, Australia is there, it could do more, Mozambique could do more. Everyone could actually produce a lot of supply. And so I suppose I see how it is quite easy to grow volume. The question is it so easy to grow value anymore in the LNG business? What is your view on growing not just the volume, but growing value as well?
Yeah, every business is about value. And as we often say, why produce the volume if you can't find value for it? Which is partly why some sites will shut down if they can't find the market anymore. We are about value. We are a value-based company, and I did mention the biggest pedigree that we pull on in terms of our relationship capital to just keep our customers. It's about customer preservation. But we continue to create that value on the back of a mutual understanding of what value means. And there is no symmetry of value, as one of my colleagues would often say. So value depends on what it means to you and what it means to us. Yes. But in the end, you are right. Yeah. So, but we have to look inwards to say, from a Nigerian point of view, it's really time for gas. Today, when you talk gas, people only think about gas to power. But then you have to also look at gas to industrialization, gas to industries, gas to petrochemicals, fertilizer, gas to transport. So it's endless what you can do with gas. So I believe while gas remains relevant, there will be value. There will always be a place for gas. But one thing that will remain topical will be price. And as you know, price is not necessarily the only variable in terms of value, but price will be perhaps the biggest factor for future discussion.
And just to end on this now, you were saying this is the year of gas in Nigeria. And again, lots of questions streaming in saying, where do you go from train 7? Are you very quickly going to develop more trains? Just give us your vision for what may be happening over the next 5 years or so, and what 2025 could look like for Nigeria.
Let me start with what it should look like for Nigeria LNG.
The master plan.
When we set out to build the trains, we had ambition to build just trains 1 and 2. Essentially, the base project was all the ambition that both company and country had. But we soon quickly added a third train, and then went on to build 4, 5, and 6 in almost a conveyor belt situation. If you step back between 1989 and 1999, so company incorporated 89, FIDs very late. It took 10 years before the first project kicked in to build trains 1 and 2. A bit like deja vu for me. It's been 15 years between train 6 and train 7. But here we are with train 7 barely starting, and we started to mature train 8. So not quite a prophet, but I see a deja vu possibility of that conveyor belt restarting. So again, ambition to do train 7 and perhaps 8, but then with a future for 9, 10, and who knows, 11, 12. And I think that cycle is likely to repeat itself. And I believe there will always be a market for LNG, definitely.
And I think that's what you absolutely have to believe in if you are the CEO of the LNG company. And as I said at the beginning, this is a very, very tough time for all CEOs, because the business environment is changing fast, and it's probably changing faster than some people's strategies. But I would like to probably draw this to a close now by saying, thank you so much for having the live presentation, the live questions. You didn't know which questions would be coming in and what we'd be asking you, but I think you've covered it all very well to give us what I think is a very pragmatic but an optimistic picture for gas, and obviously LNG's role in the industry as well. And we wish you all the very, very best of luck, and would love to have you back in a year or so's time to say what happened, or to celebrate the next.
I will definitely. I will definitely look forward to that. But I must say that Nigeria has ridden on the back of oil for more than 50 years, and from a Nigerian LNG perspective, we say it's now time for Nigeria to fly on the wings of gas, and that is partly why we say it's time for gas. It's time for Nigeria. Thank you very much, Pat.
You'll be watching. Well, thank you
it's
very
much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And from all of us here, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon. Stay safe, stay well, and all good wishes.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, everybody, to everybody. It was a fabulous turnout. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.